You are in. Where's Huddle with me, Bram, and with me, per usual, a master of all things video and sound, Maxime,
How's it going?
and my boy and producer, MT.
What's up, Nation?
Gentlemen, no guest today, which means we can be a little bit more vulnerable. I'm always kind of hesitant to show the guests how emotionally invested I am with this team. It's like embarrassing, and then it tends to come out during the conversation. But when they're not here, I can really kind of read my diary into this mic. And this episode is certainly going to have some diary entries here. Let me start it this way. How worried were you boys heading into the San Antonio game? Right. So like before they tip it, we had just lost by, I don't know, 4 million to OKC in what felt like a just hopeless fucking 2 hours. So heading into that San Antonio game, where were you guys mentally?
Expecting to lose. I mean, I already said that I think Wemby's going to win MVP. I think he's coming sooner than expected. It's like they're a scary team, and I was not in a good place after OKC.
Yeah, I was worried. It didn't. We just looked old against OKC, and you have to factor in that Steph was sick and coming back, and probably trying to find his legs and his wind. But our only problem was not that Steph had an off night, so I wasn't too hopeful for that game.
I just felt vulnerable. It wasn't just that limit, right? They were coming off of 5 losses, and 3 of which without Steph. But yeah, man, I was hella worried. I was hella worried after the first quarter. In fact, here, let's jump in. Glass half full. Look back. Yeah. We look at recent Warriors hoop. Give me something you like, something you don't. Let's start don't, because I'd like to ramp up towards how fucking important the San Antonio one is. I am feeling, I don't know, on top of the world. It's a totally different mentality now that they pulled it out, but we can start with the shitburger mentality in OKC. Things I do not like: losing by 5,000 to a young team that is seemingly having the time of their lives, and making that even worse, recognizing the joy. Like when that used to be us, man. I remember that. I remember donkey smashing teams. I remember, as Dre put it, plug and play. Doesn't matter who comes in. All of them understand the system and are playing super well. And I don't like and remember when a young team realizes who they are and starts hitting on all cylinders. The thing I've been really worried about last year with OKC is if you fuck around and you let them win, much like the Warriors in 2015, that next year they're going to realize just how good they are. And we've seen a piece of that throughout this early season, and we saw it against us. So there's things to like. We're going to talk about Steph Curry's dominance here in a second. But did I like watching that OKC game? Fuck no. 1,000 times.
Yeah, I didn't like it either for a myriad of reasons. One, they beat us that badly, and they didn't even have Jalen Williams. And don't you dare say Santa Cruz or Santa Clara, or Lou Dort. And, you look at their draft capital and you're like, oh, well, this is the last year. Then they're going to face the wrath like every other team does with the CBA. But Bradley Beal fractures his hip, and you look up and OKC owns their first round pick, which is unprotected. So you're like, and this is, we have to get KP on, but this is supposedly like a really, really deep and good draft, right? So they're just going to keep getting better. And you're like, they played that well with people who we didn't even know their names were. You had to look at the back of their jersey and be like, who is that dude? And blast us by 40 without their second best player, arguably. So it was humbling.
I did like that there was only one Jalen Williams. We didn't hear Fitz's stupid ass Arkansas, Santa Clara 1,000 times. So yeah, I'll add that. Maxime, something you didn't like.
Well, this just reminds me in general. I know it's not our squad, but just hearing that Brad Beal goes out with a hip injury, just as part of the old team crew, it's really brutal. It's like, talk about the most geriatric injury you could possibly have. So, and then meanwhile, you're seeing Al Horford struggle to acclimate to the environment, and I'm still holding out hope for him, but just yet another reminder that we're old as fuck. So in general, I'm feeling very vulnerable in this moment.
Do you think when Brad went down, he called someone and said, I've fallen and I can't get up? There's like some terrible background thing that only late 90s kids will understand for sure. Another thing that I definitely did not like, Do you guys hear that ringing? Is that just
Oh,
me?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And just in case you guys need a little Skype song in the middle of this episode, there you go. Things I don't like, Skype songs in the middle of podcasts. What I don't like, feeling vulnerable because Steph looks vulnerable. You know, watching Steph come up with 11 after looking slow is like watching Superman trip instead of fly, you know, and I wouldn't even be able to say this had Steph not bounced back and put up the 46 spot last night because of how vulnerable it made me feel. You know, so tough game, tough setting, and hard watching where Steph was just right then. But let's transition hard. What do I like, gentlemen? I like having Steph Curry in my fucking life, and I like how he continues to change for the better my sports life. Quick glimpse into where I was last night. Not good. Sick. My wife's out of town. She's doing a overnight field trip with her class. So it's just Kylie and I, which I normally love, but was just under the weather last night. And Kylie didn't want to do her math homework. So we're already in this kind of pissy location. The Warriors are getting donkey smashed in the first quarter. We're after 6 straight losses. I was in this shitty fucking place, ready to concede. You know who wasn't? Steph fucking Curry. You know, after a single quarter, looking vulnerable, he came out swinging and came out swinging hard. And it was against a team that was flashing not future dominance, we're here now dominance. You know, between Castle and Wemby and the whole Area 51 thing, they looked ready to rock. I was ready to be like, all right, you know, I was ready to start doing that super defeatist thing where you're just talking about past wins. You know, like, oh, great that you might be a champion now, but we've already got 4, like that kind of shit. And then Steph came out and proved to the world that he is still as dynamic as he has been throughout our sporting lives. And I'll add to that. I like that he went directly at Wemby. You know, I haven't watched a lot of Wemby games, but I've been taught pretty early that it doesn't matter how good you are. You avoid him. You do not go after him because he makes you eat the ball. While Steph was hot, he went right after his ass. He wasn't afraid. And he was using all that veteran guile shit to still beat Wemby. He was using the rim as protection. He was jumping into his chest. He was doing all the things that I'm sure Victor will learn how to stop in a few years. But you know where he isn't now? There yet. He couldn't do it, you know? And so watching something that had been a vulnerability for me, their age, be an asset. You know, that Steph took his experience and used it as a way to beat Wembanyama was more than satisfying, man. It was necessary. It changed my evening. It changed my outlook. It changed today. I'm just in a much better mood. And like, one of the things I didn't mention, didn't like, there was all these comments from Draymond post OKC game that are interesting to me and that we're going to cover here. But I don't know. It would have been hard to talk about if they'd lost again. Now that we've won, it's much more fun, easier, you know? So thank God for Steph Curry.
I'll add, just going on the Wembanyama. I mean, in general, as when he's not playing the Warriors, it's so fucking fun to watch him. There was some prescience, though, to the broadcast. Fitz is talking about his favorite image of Steph and Wemby. It's not the tip in the preseason back in 2022, but it's Steph shooting over him in the finals, and like that felt prescient, right? It's like, oh yeah, Steph can continue to go at him. The thing that has me stressed about Wembanyama is that there's something that you can't figure out. It doesn't matter how skilled or not he is or anybody else is. He's like a foot taller than everybody else on the court. It's insane, and that's not something that you can out talent. He's just taller than everybody else. And yet, just as Steph was able to put 46 on him, Draymond did an amazing job on him on defense. In fact, I prepared a little video for you guys just to have on in the background while we're talking through this. These are all of the times that Draymond, as the point of attack defender, both stopped or didn't stop Wemby, right? So in general, Wemby went 50% from the field last night. Against Draymond, I should say against everybody else, 6 for 8. Yep. Right? So that's like a 75% straight up. Whereas against Draymond, he goes 5 for 14, which is 36%. That's a meaningful difference, right? That's the type of shit that's like Ty Lue was talking about, Nikola Jokic. Like the game plan is just force him to shoot, even though we know he's going to hit a lot. Like nobody else is going to score, and that's how we're going to win, except, Jokic goes off. Draymond proved that it's still possible to slow him down enough to essentially to win the game. So I love seeing that, like, this is one-time defensive player of the year, which is absurd. It should be like 4. Still showing that he is elite on that end of the floor. And it just felt really good to see that it's not just about height and athleticism, that you can still outsmart a player by being in the right position, by moving your feet, by forcing him into odd angles. Just really proud of what Draymond was doing.
After the game, they asked Steph about it, and I forget how he phrased it, and I wish I had pulled the quote because I remember thinking I'd like to use that phrase because it'll make it seem like I know about the NBA. But the overarching idea was, look, stars get numbers. Like that's not defense is not going to prevent these guys from putting up real numbers. That's going to happen. What you can do is make them work much harder for their numbers, which is what leads to a win. And that's what he was talking about with Draymond last night. Wemby got his numbers, but it took him way more effort, I think, against Draymond than it did against anyone else. So yeah, credit to him.
Yeah. And I liked that that we saw early enough in the season that the JK experiment is not gonna work. Like I think it's important that we see that early. And it is a bit of fool's gold that we started off 5-1 and he was playing well and like, oh, we can make this work. I still think the larger sample size shows that it doesn't work. And last night was, in the past few games have been kind of a reckoning or regression to the middle of what the data actually shows. And I think it's going to ultimately be helpful for us in the end. I'm a big fan of D'Anthony Melton, and with him and Seth Curry coming in, I think it'll add not the height and athleticism that JK brings, but it'll add the elements that were making us successful towards the end of last year and beginning of last season. So I think he will be packaged for a player and still traded, even though through the first 6 games we were like, no, now he's staying. I think I like that it's showing that it's still not going to work, but he's a good enough player that we should get some trade value from him.
Are you 100% there, MT? That like, nope, this is not going to work. The demotion from the starting lineup, that's the right move, and now it's time to look beyond it.
I am, and just because like when you're winning, of course, it's easy for him to buy in and feel good, and then the few losses start racking up, and then the agenda comments start coming in. I know we're going to cover that, and the like. So I don't think he's the right fit long term. And I think we can bring in some interesting pieces if we package him up with a first round pick or 2 and a couple other pieces that we have.
I'll fit this into the don't like, and it follows up exactly what you're saying. On a night that I felt like they had a season saving win, which is ridiculous. I've been rooting for the NBA long enough to know you don't say that shit in November. It's ridiculous, but it felt like a season saving win. One of the things I thought was, I wonder if JK is happy. Because he didn't fucking start, and how is this impacting him? And the idea that JK's emotional well-being after an enormous win is a moment of concern has kind of led to, I'm tired of this shit. We've paid him enough now. We've catered to him enough now. If he's not happy, then too bad. If this isn't going to work out, then it is time to focus on the things that will. And if there's a more diametrically opposite dude than Will Richard and JK, not that their games are totally different, but just that, ceiling versus floor, exactly what you're going to get from Richard. I have no idea what I'm going to get from JK on a day-to-day. When they sit Richard, I'm not worried at all about what he's saying in the locker room. When they sat JK, I was worried about it. So it was what it was. MT, I know we're going to leave you early or lose you early. So let me hit you with some quick hitters. How important was San Antonio's win last night? I mean, am I wrong in saying it was absolutely needed?
No, I don't think you're wrong. I think coming off of the OKC experience, it ratcheted up its importance. And through the first quarter of the San Antonio game, we were like, oh man, we aren't the team that we thought we were through the first 6 games. So I do think it was a very important win. Wembanyama and Castle both had triple doubles, and Steph had 46, and we still only won by 5. So, there's probably some takeaways from that, but I think ultimately it was a very important win for nothing else, just the confidence and for the team to be like, okay, that's what it takes to win.
Yes.
And to remember this is how much we have to exert our energy and our force and our will on both ends of the court in order to win in this league.
And to keep their identity, right? Like earlier, I don't even remember when we talked about when would you want to have a hard stretch in your season, at the end of the year or at the beginning of the year. And with an older team, everyone I've asked that to said beginning of the year. That makes sense to me. But one of the only things that you would lose if your toughest stretch is right up front, you survive it. And hopefully a veteran team wouldn't be subject to this. But what you can lose is your fucking identity. You lose enough, you get your ass kicked enough in this early stretch, it's going to be really hard to look at yourself as difference makers again, as contenders, as the team that we thought they were after the first 5. And so if nothing else, kind of sticking up for yourself and really showing, fuck the youth, we're still here, felt like an important thing, felt like a really important thing.
Yeah. And I think our strength of schedule and the crazy banana schedule that we have of just how many games and how many days and back-to-backs and like that'll all even out at the back end of the season. So hopefully, we're saving some energy for that. But I also think that is a factor into it. Is like, is this really a true sign? Like, where this is like a playoff schedule, even probably tougher than that with the back-to-backs. But
definitely tougher.
Like we're starting off with a really tough slate of games and scheduling, and then it'll balance out. So. There's something to be said for you don't want to scream that the sky is falling just because of this abnormally hard schedule to start off.
Last question for you, MT, because we're going to hear about this a million times. And I would imagine there's going to be a runway towards it since JK can't be moved until January 15th. But Anthony Davis, it sounds like Anthony Davis is on the trade block. Dallas has finally reset. They fired Harrison. They're acknowledging that we need to build around Cooper Flagg, so we got to get these contracts out of here, starting with Mr. Davis. Do you think the Warriors, they should kick the tires on it? If it was up to you, how aggressive would you be as far as exploring an Anthony Davis trade?
I would definitely kick the tires. I'm interested in it, but the money would ultimately be the thing that makes me not do a deal, just because he's paid so much. We'd have to include like Draymond and Moody and Pods and JK and a first just to make the money work. And to me, it's just too much to give up for somebody who will more than likely be injured and only play 50 games a season. So as soon as you see Draymond's name in it, I'm out. If there's a way to construct it where it's a TJD and like another draft pick instead, maybe I'm in, but I would rather keep more of our youth and make a smaller package and go after somebody else that is more likely to be healthy.
I got one for you. All right. I have 2 trade packages. I'm going to save the second one. Maxime, you and I will explore this in a moment. Here's the first one. It's called Take Our Youth. We get back Anthony Davis. He cost him $54 million. That's exactly what you're saying. MT. Everyone says trade Jonathan Kuminga for AD. JK will be a part of the move. Also, JK makes 22.5, which means you have to make up $30 million about, right? So here's the trade. We get AD or a strange lower body injury to be named later. And we give up Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, Pajemski, Buddy Hield, Al Horford, and the 2027 first round pick, which Curry will likely still be playing at the front end of that season, right? So it's a first rounder, but like not all of the first rounders kind of deal. Would you guys do that? So here again, JK, Moses, Pods, Buddy, Horford, 2027 first round pick, get back Anthony Davis.
I wouldn't give up 6 players for one in most cases. And not for Anthony Davis. You give up 6 players if it's a Luka Doncic or a Giannis, but I don't think you give up that many pieces for a chronically injured lower body injury to be named later player.
I mean, the only upside is it'd give us a shot maybe to play for the Warriors. Like if he gets hurt, they might be like the 8,000th person in Chase Center gets to play center today, because they're not going to have anybody on the team if they give up everything for AD. All right, we'll circle back to this. But first, I'm going to switch over to our golden questions, gentlemen. This is our mailbag. Occasionally gets personal, always deals with the Warriors. And here is our first quote. What did you think of Draymond's post-game comments in OKC? So, Maxime, I brought this up a little bit, and it felt like a huge deal after the OKC win. Such a huge deal that I was kind of worried about talking about it. Like it was almost like rubbing our faces in this infighting and maybe this is the end kind of deal. But now that they've won, it's just collateral drama, which I love, so it's shifted it. They're asking us what we think of them. Let's expand it a little bit and let's start by playing the comments.
I think everybody was committed to winning and doing that any way possible. And right now, it doesn't feel that way.
Personal agenda type stuff, or like, I guess how was you kind of?
I think everyone has a personal agenda in this league, but you have to make those personal agenda work in the team confines. And if it doesn't work, then you kind of got to get rid of your agenda, or eventually the agenda is the cause of someone getting rid of you. And so, I think you don't want a team with no personal agendas, because a goal is an agenda, And so you got to have some type of personal agenda.
Quick random aside. There's a few truths in life I like to stick by. Truth number one, if a sentence rhymes, it's generally true. He who smelt it dealt it. Something that I've lived by my entire life. Also, if a sentence is symmetrical, it feels really important. If you are the whole game agenda thing, if you have a personal agenda and it's not working, that personal agenda be why they get rid of you. I thought that was well handled by Draymond, but there has been a ton of speculation about who he was talking about. The first person to offer kind of a passive aggressive opinion was a person who asked that question, Anthony Slater, who wrote an article entitled "Draymond Green Doesn't Feel Like Warriors Committed to Winning," and includes this paragraph, quote, "When the term agenda enters the mix, attention needs to shift towards two of the Warriors' youngest core members who have been outspoken about their desire for more. Third-year guard Brandon Podziemski and fifth-year forward Jonathan Kuminga. Podziemski made a number of comments in the lead-up to the season about his long-term career ambitions, including a news conference answer to a question about whether he wanted to be as great as Steph Curry. Podziemski said he, quote, wants to be better than him, an answer that elicited some eye rolls and continued references from several within the organization. Podziemski's numbers, 12 points per game, 4.7 rebounds, 3.1 assists, are relatively stable from a season ago. But I'll tell you who disagrees, Maxime, Draymond. If we've got that other clip that I sent you, Kevin O'Connor is kind of a talking head in the NBA blogosphere. We're looking at I don't know if it's a tweet. I don't know where this came from, but Kevin O'Connor says this, quote, "Who cares if Pod says he hopes to be better than Steph Curry? It's ridiculous that Warriors veterans are side-eyeing him or Jonathan Kuminga or any other young teammates. The old guys are the problem in Golden State, not the youth. Draymond Green has declined, and Jimmy Butler has always been a malcontent who has failed to step up in the biggest moments for multiple years now. This is on them more than anyone else. Steph Curry is still great and deserves so much better." Here's from Draymond Green answering Kevin O'Connor. "And I'm certain I know far more about winning than you do. You couldn't win your intramural sports and thought it was a good idea to become an NBA writer. And if you want to do some in-depth analysis and game breakdown, I will put you to shame at that. Who said it was the young guys, Kevin? I said we, in all capitals. One thing for certain, I don't mince words, and you don't have to speak for me. That's what the Draymond Green show is for. I speak for me always." He didn't add this, but I'm reading it parenthetically. Fuck yourself, Kevin O'Connor. So, that was in there one way or another. Maxime, all right, so there's our quote. There's some guesses on who it was aimed at. Was it a big deal that he said it? And who do you think he's talking about?
I don't know what it's like to be sitting on a podium after a game, a win or a loss, but there's a lot of stuff happening, right? And yeah, I feel you. There's a loaded question and probably a loaded answer, but you're having a lot of feelings in that moment, right? And then stuff swirls or whatever. But I do think that the Slater piece that he wrote in The Athletic is very telling, because this is an organization that tends to be pretty buttoned up.
Yeah.
Not nearly as loose from a front office perspective, with rumors flying around and whatnot. So when Slater has this kind of information, like elicited eye rolls from the front office, they wanted him to write that. That didn't get slipped out, which says something. Maybe it says we're getting ready to package him with 12 other players for Anthony Davis, or maybe it just says we're pretty frustrated and he needs to hear a little bit about it. But I think that Draymond understands, especially after punching Jordan Poole, that his role on this team carries many different hats, and he can't just proverbially punch Pods in the face. So he has to kind of stand up for him a little bit as another player on the team. But I think it's very clear that there's frustration around the organization with Brandon Podziemski.
Loaded questions, Matt. So like, I'm an attorney, right? We depose people. There's different ways you can hedge a question. Let's say that a case, one of the things that's a big deal in a case is how long has passed after someone got hit by a car or something. Someone was sitting in the street after they got hit by a car, and how long they were sitting there is a big deal. I could ask the question of a witness, how long did you see him sitting there? Now it's an open playing field. They could say anything they wanted, right? Or if I'm an attorney and I'd like it to be longer, if 30 minutes is how long I want them to have been there, I could also ask the question, how long do you think he was there? 45, 50 minutes? You think it was over an hour? Now, it's still up to them to answer it. They could say anything they want. They could say 5 minutes, but I've put time in your mind, and now if you're going to go 30, it requires you to hedge 15 minutes from the suggestion I've given you. That I haven't talked to Slater. I have no idea what's happening at all. But that his follow-up was personal agendas, like that. I recognize that as an attorney. That's a leading question. I'm putting something in your mind. You can do anything you want. And to be fair, if there is a deponent anywhere who is more personally strong than Draymond Green, I'm not sure who it is. He's not going to get sucked into that shit. But it did feel like there had been, if not blatant discussion beforehand, some kind of understanding. So how worried was I before San Antonio? I'd say a good 7 or 8 out of 10. Like, holy shit, we're already infighting. It's not December. And who did I think it was? Podziemski. I 100% thought that it was aimed at Podziemski. I think I've asked you this before. Remind me, does Pods' confidence bother you? Right? Because personal agenda, that's all they could be talking about. Pods hasn't come out and specifically said, I want more. That's not what he's done. What he's come out and said is, I will get more. That he was recently, they asked him about his would-be baseball career, if he had chosen baseball and not basketball. And to be fair, he hedged it a little bit, but he said, I'd basically be like Shohei Ohtani. It's like, holy shit, were you considering Babe Ruth too, dude? But you backed off to Shohei? He has said that he expects, that the reins will be passed to him. He's answered the question, as we heard in that article, about, are you going to be as good as Steph Curry? Better. None of those things are bad to think. I hope that he does have those kind of goals, but I've also said I'm annoyed when he says them. If any of those things are true, fuck you, show us. When Steph most likely felt vulnerable after OKC. When all of us, he was aware he only put up 11, and he was aware that everyone was watching it, and he's aware how this season's gone and who OKC is. I bet you he was feeling very vulnerable between OKC and San Antonio. He could have come out and said, you know what I'm going to do? 40 spot tomorrow. 40 spot. Fuck this. I'm tired of being underestimated. I'm doing this. You know what he did? Put up a 40 spot. He didn't say that shit. For what? He just show us. If you can do it, show us. And so I have no problem with Podziemski being confident. I in fact think that confidence is what makes NBA players. But I've also said it annoys me. Show us, dude. You don't have to tell us. For you, where are you on that spectrum?
Yeah, when we talked about this last, he hadn't made the "I would be the white Shohei Ohtani" comment, which puts it really does recontextualize it, because then it starts to, I get it. We've had his dad on the podcast a couple of times. We've heard the anecdote about him in middle school saying, baseball is boring to me. I've already figured it out. Maybe that's all true, and he actually is a baseball mastermind, and would have been the greatest player of all time if he were to go into the MLB. But that is a bold ass statement that is really easy to say and a lot harder to do. In the same way that he says, "I want to be better than Steph Curry," awesome, dude. Me too, man. But like to your point, you got to show it. I think that's exactly right on. And it's starting to be grading. If you say it once, I think what I said last time we talked about this on the pod is that he's put a audacious, but nonetheless a flagpole out there, right? Something that he's chasing towards. And it sometimes can be easier to, if you have a New Year's resolution, you tell your friends you're more likely to keep it. Okay, fine. Even in the best reading of it, like it's acceptable. But when you then go out and say, "Oh, I would also be Otani," it's starting to be like, okay, this is just delusional thinking, and it makes me question everything. And then you hear about these comments about people in the front office eye rolling, and it's like, okay, what hasn't gotten out to the media that he said before? And I'm starting to find the whole demeanor a little bit grating.
I mean, it's all shades. If you and I are talking about your New Year's resolution, and you say, "You know what, Bram, I've been out of shape, man. I want to get in shape." I would be kind of annoyed by that just because of who I am, but like not objectively, I couldn't be, good for you. Instead of that, if you said, I'm going to get into the best shape that anyone has ever gotten in ever, then I would be justified. Like, whoa, settle down, dude. And same, like across the board. If I asked you, if you were a cook, how good would you be? Better than Michael Minna. If you were a boxer, how good would you be? Better than Mike Tyson. Maybe this is just my subjective feel. I don't like when people bring attention to themselves. If you deserve the attention, you'll get it anyways. But my initial reaction whenever you are screaming at me how amazing you are is fuck you. I don't like it. And so to use the phrase that was used in that article, it's eye rolling, and like it's eye rolling and harmless if they're winning. It's eye rolling and if they're starting to get their asses kicked, and so thank God we may have resurrected this, but there was a period of time where I was like, that's not super good to hear.
No, I agree, and it brings up a larger point. I don't know what was discussed in these team meetings, but I think in general, a barometer for an feeling in a season is having a team meeting. I just generally don't like that. I don't feel like we need to be airing out things unless things really need to be aired out. So, not a fan. It does not bode well for the state of Golden State.
Or the phrase personal agenda.
Oh,
like if the phrase personal agenda is thrown around in any kind of press conference, not the best. And if it's happening in fucking mid-November, it's like, ooh, hey, I don't know. Unless they're talking about like off-season plans or something. There's nothing that could make me feel better, but we've avoided it. We're okay. Yeah, I think we're okay. And unless they lose on Friday, and then I'll freak the fuck out. But we're not there yet. So we'll see where it goes. To a much more fun question in our last one. A person sent in this clip from MMA fighter Tracy Cortez. I don't know Cortez very well. In fact, I don't know MMA fighting very well, but I found this quote really entertaining. They asked Tracy, if you had to select an NBA player to be an MMA fighter, who would you select? Here's your answer.
Who's one athlete from another sport that you think would make a good MMA fighter?
Oh my God. One athlete from another sport. I would say Steph Curry.
Leave it up there just for a sec. That face screams that the only name of another athlete she could come up with at that time was Steph Curry. It's screaming like, was that acceptable? Like, oh, that's okay. Is this interview over? But there's Tracy's answer. And instead of giving my opinion on that, let's make it a new question. Maxime, to you, if you had to select a current Warrior to fight in an MMA match, let's say 3 rounds, 3 minutes per, who would you select? And really, I mean, to background this, at least for me, it's who could I survive against? I can't fight for shit. I've said that 1,000 times. I'm desperately out of shape. There's no way I can either throw or take a punch. So for me, I'm picking somebody who I might be able to run away from for 9 minutes. I'm not sure though.
Yeah, no, thank you for that context, right? Because it is me fighting them. I hadn't thought about it until this moment, but was like, okay, this is a professional MMA fighter. Even if they had very little knowledge of the NBA, they probably at least know who Draymond Green is, right? Sure. So it's like when you're trying to talk about different fighters, even just on the Warriors, it occurred to me that she picked somebody small, right? She picked a point guard, and I looked it up. The average MMA fighter is 5'9", right? It's a much smaller sport. Yep. Which makes sense. It's very different from playing ball. And so that leads me to think that if I needed to fight against somebody, I think I would pick Al Horford for a couple of reasons. One, he's tall, right? Which is like way outside the average. So I might be able to, like you said, avoid him for 9 minutes. He's also old, so I might be able to, I mean, old, I'm not that much. I think we're like the same age, so it's not going to be that helpful, but like, at least he's not one of these 22-year-old guns. And also, like you said, the kind eyes. I think we might get a couple minutes in and just lock eyes and then start, welling up a little bit and then realize that we're actually friends and we're ending up hugging it out by the end. So I'm also counting a little bit on the kindness of Al Horford to get me away from a knockout.
I haven't watched that much MMA. I don't know how frequent it is that they lock eyes and end up hugging before the fight, but it could
It's a
happen.
lot.
Yeah, it could happen. And there you go. Maybe that's why I don't watch it that frequently. There's not enough fighting. I backed into the same answer, but here, let me wrap up to how I got to Al Horford. So I tried to start with the people I thought were like lesser athletes, but I'm 100% wrong on it. Pat Spencer, I threw him out there. Pat Spencer beats the shit out of me. He played fucking lacrosse. He seems to still be in shape. And he's in the portion of his career where any notoriety would matter to him. So, like that MMA fight doesn't really matter, but like he's going to get some attention. And so I'm getting my ass kicked. GP2 is the next guy I came to. Kind of injury prone, maybe a little bit small. Not true at all. Hard as fuck. Probably beats the hell out of him. Like I could not get there, which led me to Al Horford. Not just the age, I agree with you, but where he is in his career. If Al Horford found himself in some kind of ridiculous MMA sidelight fight, they're like the Warriors are like, man, yeah, we need to give up somebody. So would you go in there? You know who would not give one shit about it? Al Horford. So if I have to like somehow survive for 3 minutes and it's against someone who's just like, I just want to, can we both just get through this? Like that's my guy. Yeah. So I think I could maybe get through if it was Horford. Last question. If you had to pick a Warrior to make it through an MMA fight, a real one, the question that Tracy Cortez was asked, who do you take? Because I think everyone's going to say Draymond here, but Draymond might be a little low. Like I'm not sure he's the guy, but who's your take?
There's a lot. I got a lot of follow-up questions. Is it like right now, like they have about 5 minutes to warm up, or do we give them an off season to prepare? What kind of timeline are we looking at here?
Let's give them 2 weeks. They get 2 weeks to learn the sport and get in there. No.
Okay. It's not very much time because I do think if you have an off season, maybe she's right with Steph, like that dude can do anything. Hand-eye coordination, like dude is strong as shit now. I might give it to him, but otherwise I think I got to go, I might actually give it to Will Richard. I feel like there's just like a fuck you energy, right? And like sort of to your point, with Pat Spencer, like it's an opportunity to prove it. And like young guys are pretty facile at this point. So he might be able to ramp up with a couple of weeks of work.
What I understand about lacrosse, which is very small, it's basically just a series of fights with sticks. I mean, I don't know that. I have not watched it. I owned a lacrosse ball when I was like 8, and I think I threw it against the wall and it hit me in the nuts, and I never played with it again. In fact, I know that's exactly what happened. But as that is a background, I think I take Pat Spencer, and it's for all the things we've kind of set up. I think he'd be looking for the opportunity to set himself apart. I think he's been in a ton of fights, and that mustache makes me feel like he'd be willing to throw. So, that's my guy. 5-6 years ago, it's Draymond all day. But at this stage, it is Pat Spencer. I had another question here about the Morris twins, but we'll save it. In fact, I'll tease it. Apparently, the Morris twins are still beefing with the Jokic brothers. They've given out a couple of quotes about how if they fought, 100% they would win. I don't know if they expect there to be like some pay-per-view or like that there's some fight coming, but it fit right into this MMA theme. So we'll keep it as a tease. We'll answer who we think would win on a 2-on-2 MMA fight when we get to it. And I guess with that in mind, go Warriors. And hopefully we'll see you real soon.